Ever felt drained by people, yet guilty for even thinking about pulling away? You say yes again, even when your chest tightens, even when your mind screams no. Because that's who you are, right? The reliable one, the available one, the good one. But what if I told you that endless availability isn't kindness? It's self-erasure. Carl Jung called it the abandonment of the self, a quiet betrayal that happens not all at once, but in 1,000 tiny moments. Moments when you ignore your own needs to meet someone else's expectations, when you smile to keep the peace, even though your soul aches for silence, when your boundaries melt because you're too afraid of what will happen if you set them, and the world applauds. They call you generous, supportive, noble. But inside, something begins to rot. That ache, that resentment you can't quite name, it's your psyche revolting against a life that doesn't belong to you. Jung believed that every time you betray yourself for the sake of being liked or needed, you're feeding the persona, the mask you wear for others, while starving the self. And here's the terrifying part. The more available you are to others, the less available you become to yourself. So maybe the real problem isn't that people expect too much from you. Maybe it's that you've forgotten how to expect anything from yourself. This video isn't about becoming selfish. It's about reclaiming something sacred, your inner authority. Because when you stop being always available, everything changes. There's a moment, quiet, subtle, when you realize the life you're living isn't really yours. You wake up in a body that moves out of habit. You say the right things, wear the right face, perform the right script. But deep down, something's off. There's a hollow echo inside your chest. Jung would say you're trapped in the persona, the mask forged by society, family, and fear. It's polished, presentable, but it's not you. And the more you live inside it, the more distant you grow from yourself. Not the ego-driven self, but the true self, the part of you untouched by approval or rejection. What fills that growing void? Distraction, pleasing, perfectionism. We numb with busyness. We fill calendars like we're running from our own reflection. But silence finds us, always. And in that silence, a shadow stirs. The part of you you've hidden, your anger, your grief, your unmet desires. That's the shadow, Jung said. Not evil, not wrong, just repressed. Ignored long enough, it leaks. In your sarcasm, your burnout, your sudden desire to disappear from it all. You're not broken. You're exhausted from playing a role that was never meant to define you. The path forward isn't louder hustle or greater sacrifice. It's individuation. The slow, painful, beautiful process of becoming whole again. It begins not with answers, but with honest questions. Who am I beneath the mask? What do I want when no one is watching? And most of all, what would it mean to stop performing and simply exist? Before rebirth, there must be death. Not the physical kind, but the quiet, aching death of who you thought you were. This is the moment Jung feared most for his patients, not because it was dangerous, but because it was sacred. To change, you must first grieve the person you've been. You grieve the people you pleased, the dreams you borrowed, the personality you curated to survive. You mourn the mask, not because it was false, but because it protected you, until it didn't. Here's the paradox. The very identity that got you here is now the prison keeping you stuck. It's terrifying. Your world starts to blur, values crumble. What once felt solid becomes soft. You're no longer who you were, but not yet who you'll become. This is the in-between, the cocoon, where the caterpillar dissolves before wings ever form. Most people run from this space. They reach for quick fixes. New jobs, new relationships, new obsessions. Anything to avoid the funeral of the false self. But if you stay, if you sit with the discomfort, if you stop trying to fix yourself and instead let yourself fall apart, something radical happens. You start hearing your own voice again. It's faint, but it's real. Not the voice trained to impress, but the one that whispers what truly matters. And slowly you begin to realize the death of the old you isn't a tragedy. It's a return. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Saying no is more than rejection. It's initiation. Every time you say no to something that once defined you, a false obligation, a toxic dynamic, a role you've outgrown, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Carl Jung didn't believe in blind obedience to social norms. He saw them as shadows, collective expectations that silence the self and reward the mask. So when you stop being available to the chaos, to the constant performance, to the need to be liked, you're not withdrawing. You're waking up. The world won't clap for this. It prefers your compliance. Your boss might say, "You've changed." Your friends might say, "You're different now." And they'll be right, because you're finally setting boundaries, not to punish others, but to protect your becoming. Every no is a declaration. I no longer betray myself to be accepted. And that's terrifying, because so much of who you thought you were was built on yeses you never meant. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I can help. Yes, I'm fine. But inside, a war was raging between the person they needed you to be and the person you really are. So here's the truth most people won't tell you. Your healing will offend others. Your clarity will make them uncomfortable. Your refusal to perform will be seen as rebellion. Let it be. Because when you start saying no to the noise, you start hearing the signal. And that signal is you, unfiltered, unapologetic, uncompromising. Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he forgot to mention, the price is everything you're not. And that price, worth it. Nobody tells you this. But when you start living your truth, you lose people. Not just strangers, but family, friends, lovers, the versions of yourself they once knew and loved and expected to stay the same. Carl Jung called this the path of individuation, and it sounds beautiful until it hurts, because individuation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming what you never were, and in the process, everything fake falls away. The masks, the roles, the smiles that cost your soul. And what's left? Silence, stillness, space. At first, it feels like emptiness, like exile, like failure. But that silence? It's sacred. It's the pause between the lies you lived and the truth you're becoming. In this solitude, you start to hear a voice, not external, not demanding, but deeply familiar. It's the self calling you home. But make no mistake, the path is narrow, and it often leads away from the crowd. You might feel crazy, too intense, too awake, because while others are chasing validation, you're sitting with your shadow. While they perform perfection, you're wrestling with pain. And while they numb their truth, you've chosen to feel yours, fully. This kind of loneliness isn't punishment, it's purification. It's the soul clearing space for what's real, for what's lasting, for you. Jung said, loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. And maybe that's the cost of waking up, not being understood, but finally understanding yourself. Eventually, the silence becomes your sanctuary, the loneliness, your teacher. And from that stillness, a new reality begins to emerge. It's not louder, it's clearer, sharper, more honest. You look at life and it no longer feels like something to chase. It feels like something to meet. Exactly where it is. You no longer perform, you express, You no longer convince, you connect when it's real. And when it's not, you simply let go. Carl Jung taught that after confronting the shadow, the self becomes visible, not as an idea, but as an experience. You realize you are not your thoughts, you are not your history, you are not who others need you to be. You are awareness, presence, possibility, and from that space you rebuild, not to impress, but to align. Relationships shift, some fade, others deepen. You no longer fear the loss because you understand what leaves was never truly yours, and what stays resonates. The world feels lighter, not because it changed, but because you stopped carrying what wasn't yours. This is the psychological switch Jung hinted at. When you stop seeking safety in the familiar and start choosing truth, even when it costs you comfort. This is not a return to who you were, it's the birth of who you've always been, a life built not on expectations, but on essence. And suddenly, you don't just see clearly, you live clearly, you walk differently, speak differently, love differently, not because you're trying, but because you're free. Once you shift, the world responds. Not immediately, but inevitably. Because energy doesn't lie, and authenticity is magnetic. People feel it. They can't always name it, but they feel it. You no longer need to chase, because what aligns finds you. Carl Jung believed the external world mirrors the internal. So when you clean the lens of your perception, reality reflects a different picture. Conversations become more real. Opportunities feel guided, not forced. Coincidences become signs, and life starts whispering instead of shouting. Your boundaries become invitations, not barriers. Invitations to meet you at your frequency or keep walking. You realize how much you used to tolerate just to feel loved, how often you abandoned yourself to be accepted. But now you choose differently, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. And something unexpected happens. People respect it, even if they don't understand it. Because when you show up whole, you give others silent permission to do the same. You stop reacting to noise and start responding to truth. And in this new life, there's less drama, less confusion, less pretending. Because clarity repels chaos. You attract what you are, not what you want. And when who you are is aligned, what comes is aligned. Jung once said, "We don't see things as they are. We see them as we are." Now, you see through the eyes of someone who's done the work. You're no longer seeking transformation. You've become it. And the world finally sees you. After the noise fades and the masks fall, you're left with something strange. Silence. It's not peace at first, it's discomfort. It's the echo of all you avoided. Carl Jung called this confronting the shadow. Not to fix it, but to know it. To sit with the pain without trying to escape it. This is the part where most people turn back. They fill the void with noise, with people, with goals, with scrolling. But if you stay, something miraculous happens. In that emptiness, you start to hear yourself again, not the self shaped by expectations, the real one, the one beneath all performance. You realize the void is not a hole, it's a womb, a space where new life forms, and in that stillness you begin to heal, not with effort, but with surrender. You stop fighting for meaning and start receiving it. The silence becomes a sanctuary, the solitude becomes sacred, and the parts of you that once hid step forward, ready to be seen. Jung taught that individuation, the journey toward wholeness, requires integration, not perfection. You don't need to become someone else. You need to remember who you are when you're not trying to be anything. And in the nothingness, you find everything. There is no going back after this, because now you know the void wasn't empty. It was full of you. What if your constant availability is the very thing killing your potential? Carl Jung didn't just study the mind, he studied withdrawal, not as isolation, but as transformation. When you stop being available to everyone, you stop being fragmented. You stop scattering your energy across people, situations, and expectations that drain your soul. You begin to gather yourself, to redirect that energy inward, toward clarity, toward depth, toward becoming. Being unavailable isn't arrogance, it's self-preservation. It's saying, I choose not to leak my essence into places that don't nourish me. And suddenly, everything changes. People respect boundaries you never had to explain. Your silence becomes power. Your presence becomes rare. And rare things are valued. You're no longer responding to every message, reacting to every opinion, rushing to please. You're building something sacred. From within, Jung would say, you've stepped out of the collective trance and into your own myth. Now you're not just living, you're choosing. Each yes with intention, each no with purpose. This is the psychological switch that rewires your life. You're not vanishing, you're returning to yourself. And from that centered place, you're more powerful, more present, and more free than you've ever been. So stop being always reachable. Stop being on demand. Stop being what the world expects. Start being what your soul requires. And watch as the world begins to orbit around the you were always meant to be.